A new TSA pilot program is aimed at making airport security as simple as unlocking your phone. But the AI technology behind it is prompting some serious concerns over privacy and racial bias. The program is in place at 25 airports across the U.S., including Logan right here in Boston. They're using facial recognition technology to speed up identity verification. Instead of handing agents your ID and boarding pass, some travelers have been able to simply slide their ID into a machine and look into a camera and be on their way. But facial recognition software has a history of working better on people with lighter skin and falsely identifying or not even recognizing some people of color. These kinds of racial biases are problems that my next guest has dedicated her career to solving. Dr. Joy Buolamwini is the founder of the Algorithmic Justice League and an expert in AI bias. She has testified on her research before federal lawmakers and has persuaded companies to hold off on implementing AI technology until federal regulations can catch up. I'm also joined by Jeffrey Fowler, technology columnist with the Washington Post, who has covered the evolution of AI technology extensively. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Buolamwini, I want to start with you. I read about this technology and the issue around folks who maybe have very dark skin and not even being picked up by these machines. And I'm thoughtful about what this means for identifying folks who may, be called out falsely for crimes or anything like that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Your concerns are very well founded and also well documented. The National Institute for Standards and Technology, for example, released research showing that not just dark African American faces, but also Asian faces, right, were up to 100 times more likely to be failed upon by these systems than the faces of white individuals. There are also studies that show age bias, that show gender bias as well. And so you have a number of communities that are already implicated by well-documented failures of facial analysis technologies. And it's also what happens, right, if somebody is misidentified, which we have seen in other types of rollouts of facial recognition, where it starts with one-to-one matching, like what you might imagine on an iPhone, but then it can go to one-to-many matching where you have mass surveillance. And there we've had numerous arrests and false imprisonment of a number of Black men in Detroit, for example, as a result of deploying biased facial recognition technology. So to see this being rolled out by the TSA is extremely concerning.
And Jeffrey, I know that in your reporting, there's also privacy concerns here.
That's right. There are lots of concerns. On the privacy front, once this information gets collected by the government, what are they doing with it? Who are they sharing it with? How long will they hold on to it? And then just as important, what happens if someone tries to steal it? Believe it or not, this has already happened to the Department of Homeland Security. In 2019, their systems were breached via a contractor, and somebody grabbed photos of people crossing the Canadian border. So, there's a lot of questions and things that really have to be worked out before this technology is ready to be used on all Americans.
And the way I understand it is that you put your ID into this machine, but there's also still a TSA agent as sort of a check against that. Is that correct, Jeffrey?
That's right. There's sort of two different ways that they're testing this technology right now. Both of them still involve the presence of agents, again, at least for now. The first one, the one that most people might see at regular TSA checkpoints, is called one-to-one checking. So you literally take your existing ID, your driver's license, you stick it into a machine, and it tries to determine, is your face the same as the face of the person on the ID? If the system rejects it, there's supposed to be an agent there that makes the final call and decides, is this the same person? The other test that they're doing, and clearly it's where they want this to head, is a one-to-many test. And right now that is limited to people who have joined in to programs like TSA Pre. And in that case, you don't even have to stick your ID into a machine. Your face is your ID in a sense. because as soon as you step up to the checkpoint, it scans your face against a database of faces of people the government thinks will be at the airport that day, and then tries to make a match.
I'm also thoughtful, Dr. Buolamwini. I mean, we already know that the airport kind of feels very security tight. We know that there's going to be federal officers, perhaps local officers as well, and especially since 9/11. But if people of color know that they could have some sort of incidence of racial bias through these types of systems, do you think it'll turn folks away from this space, from our airports, and make them feel less safe?
We already are having reports of people feeling less safe. Our own director of policy and advocacy, Tawana Petty, was traveling from Detroit. She has been studying these systems for a very long time, and even she felt like she couldn't resist. She wanted to say no, right? But then are you inviting more scrutiny? And also there are a ton of people waiting behind you. And I think something we have to keep in mind, and moving to what Jeffrey was saying a bit, is the goal is to move from pilot to default and to move to this live facial recognition. And this is especially concerning when we're seeing places like the EU, right, moving towards restricting the use of biometrics because of the ways in which it can be invasive and discriminatory. And so at a point where the US is saying we want to take leadership when it comes to ethical, equitable, or responsible AI, this is a step in exactly the wrong direction. And absolutely, people are already feeling less safe.
Jeffrey, I'm thoughtful also about what are the overall benefits? Is it because if you already have an agent there who's helping in this particular situation, then it just seems like you're sort of doubling up. You're paying for this expensive machinery, and then there's a person there. And if the goal is to then just have the machine, who's going to be there as a check against the machine?
Yes. Well, so when I've interviewed the folks at TSA who are running these programs, they've said that the ultimate goal is to A, be more accurate than a human can be, and B, to be more efficient. However, they haven't released any data on either of those points yet. And in fact, after I reported on this pilot in my column in the Washington Post last year, a number of senators, including, I believe, all of the senators from Massachusetts, wrote to the TSA and said, please give us some hard data. Tell us how often are you getting false positives and false negatives on this system at airports? How much is it speeding you up? And you know what? The TSA, in their public response to that open letter, refused to say. They said those numbers were matters of national security, and they would only answer them in private to the senators. So we really have to, at this point, just take their word that it is A, more accurate than people, and B, speeding things up.
Also, we're hearing about this facial recognition technology, not just in airports, but in places like Madison Square Garden, in large event spaces and things like that. As this becomes more part of our society, especially when we're in public spaces, outside of the racial concern and the privacy concerns, it seems like folks are going to be surveilled just about everywhere. And I'd have you both sort of comment on that, and starting with you, Jeffrey.
I think when people start to get a sense of what we're becoming, it starts to look a little bit like China.
Yeah.
And China is a place that has, a full throttle embraced the use of facial recognition and put it in all kinds of public spaces, uses it for policing, and you name it. And I think there are plenty of reasons to be concerned that America could be headed that direction. Now, we're not exactly there yet. The TSA, for example, says that the images that it is collecting right now, it does not share with other branches of the government. It does not use it for law enforcement. But, the question always is, what will be the next use? Because we know it's never limited to just what happens in the trials.
Yeah.
And following up on that point, when the government agency, the IRS, adopted facial recognition, they also made a claim, right, that it wasn't being used in particular ways that later we found out, indeed, it was being used to check people's identification. to criminal potential matches. So I'm not sure we can completely take the government's word for it. And certainly we are seeing the proliferation of facial recognition technologies in such a way where the face might be the final frontier of privacy. I think it's so important that we have data about the use of these systems. Actually, today, the Algorithmic Justice League, we launched a TSA checkpoint scorecard. You can go to fly.ajl.org to share what your experiences have been. Was there notice? Did you even know this was happening? Did you consent, right? What happened if you tried to opt out because you're not supposed to face any sorts of consequences? And do you have any privacy concerns like so many of the ones Jeffrey has been pointing out for quite some time?
I'm also thoughtful as folks travel this summer, right? School's about to get out here in Massachusetts. You know, I imagine people don't have a choice here. If they want to fly, they have to comply, basically. Is that right, Jeffrey?
I mean, to that point, after I wrote about this in the Washington Post, I heard from so many readers, including people who told me they read my column and they said they read that they were told they didn't have to participate, they could opt out. So they said, I would like to not look into the camera. And you know what they were told by the officer? They were told, there's always one of them. So this is the lived reality of trying to resist this technology in this form right now. And so, yeah, I think people don't really have the option that the government wants to make it seem like they have.
Doctor, I'd love you to weigh in on that point.
I think the right to refusal is paramount. This is supposed to be opt-in, but the reality is showing something completely different. This is exactly why we're collecting this information. So if you have flown, you've had your face snatched, you don't have to think it's too late. You had, for example, Facebook Meta deleted over 1 billion face prints because there were laws against the biometric use of that kind of data. And so it's not the case that if you've already felt that your face has been snatched or taken by the government, that there's nothing we can do. This is the time to resist. The government has already made it very clear that the pathway and the roadmap is to make what we're seeing as a trial or a pilot mandatory. If you don't want this to be the default option, this is the time to have your voice heard.
For sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Joy Buolamwini and Jeffrey Fowler. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.